And good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this public meeting. We'll go ahead and wait a few more minutes. We seem to have quite a bit of activity with folks signing on. We have 13 or 14 people in the meeting at the moment. We have 14 now. We'll wait another couple of minutes to give people time to get on the conversation with us. This is an open meeting to the extent that we will, it's sort of like a drop-in meeting. You can come in and listen for a while, you can leave, you can come back, and we'll leave this open either until everyone's had a chance to speak or 6 o'clock gets here, whatever, but try to make this as productive as we can. So we'll just wait a few more minutes. We're up to 15 now, so. All right, we're up to 20 participants. I think that's plenty for us to call this a public meeting, and we'll certainly, as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, we'll leave this open. Folks can join us. You can leave and come back if you need to. We'll try to watch the entrance and exits to allow you back in as quickly as we can. I'd like to explain a little bit about how the meeting works. I'll give a quick update of where we are on the project, and then I'll go basically by what I see on the screen, and I'll just ask a person, and if you think I'm talking to you and we wave at each other, that we'll find a way to communicate that we will unmute you and ask you to make your comment for us. If you could, remember that this meeting is being recorded on Zoom. That's for freedom of information reasons. and we want this to be productive, and we also want it to be enjoyable as much as it can be, to the extent that we try to be respectful. And we sure appreciate you being online this afternoon. I do see that David Barnes is on, and Tyler Gibbs. I've had the opportunity to be emailing them extensively, and they've been absolutely great about relaying information from the street to us at the city. And we hope that we've already heard the majority of the comments, but again, we do want to make this evening available to you so that you've had the opportunity to speak in a public forum. Quick update: we have been listening to your comments, and we've been able to make some changes based on your comments. The project will be constructed because it's been 20 years that it's been talked about. The city council's had it on their minds. It's been mentioned as part of the 2018 sales tax bond issue, and we have several other documents, plats, things that have come before the Planning Commission in the past 20 years, where we've seen that Hemphill was intended to be constructed all the way through to Maryland. Maybe it didn't happen for whatever reason, but now we're ready. I would like to tell you and try to reassure you that we do have the design with one sidewalk. We've been able to agree among the engineering side of things that the one sidewalk is sufficient. We don't have to have two, so we've got it down to one. There are no bike lanes in the design. We've taken out all the bike lanes. The reason for that is we're able to move that requirement about a block away east of you to what will be someday the power line trail underneath that big Entergy power line. So we're very pleased with your comments that you've offered. We're very pleased we've been able to listen to them and incorporate some of them. And we want you to be able to express yourselves to us this evening and basically try to decide between three options that remain. And what remains is basically how wide is the road, and is there a buffer between the sidewalk and the curb. The buffer is very important because it makes people walking on the sidewalk feel more comfortable, makes them feel like they're not out next to the traffic. It also leaves that grass buffer for the vehicles, the cars that are driving by, to be able to see that you have a little green space between you and the pedestrians, between the vehicles and the pedestrians. That way it makes the operators of the vehicles feel more comfortable that whoever's on the sidewalk is going to stay on the sidewalk. So there's reasons for that green buffer to be there more than just looks. It's not exactly intended to be a landscaping feature by any means. It's for safety and comfort. And the other, again, the width of the street, 27 feet is the standard width for a local street. We have Country Club Road in Sherwood. If you've driven down Country Club Road, you may not realize that people don't park on Country Club, but nobody parks on Country Club, and that's pretty much because it's only 25 feet wide. Now, standard today is 27, but years ago, 25 is what was built. And that's like 70, 80 years ago. So 25 works at that location because people are familiar with it. It's been there forever, so to speak. And it is curbed and guttered. But 25 is very narrow. And there's a lot of cars that move through there very effectively. We have good speed limits posted, and the police do watch that. So I want you to understand that 27 feet is not necessarily too narrow to handle the traffic. It's just a matter of whether cars are parked out there. Yeah. If your preference is to be able to park on the street occasionally, then we ought to be looking at the 32 feet back of curb. Only 5 feet difference between the two. It'd be 2.5 feet out of your yard, but that 2.5 feet may be important to you, or you may feel like you'd rather have the opportunity to park in front of your house or have guests to park there. So at this time, I will start with a couple of the gentlemen that I know and have them speak, and then we'll move on. If you can limit yourselves to 3 to 5 minutes, that'll give everybody a chance to speak. And then if we've got time left over, we'll just come around and go through it again. So I'll ask David Barnes, if you will, David, if you can make a comment for us. And I have a gentleman in our office, this screen that says you see the word Sherwood in the background. That's Dennis, and he's in our engineering office. He'll be controlling the traffic, so to speak, here to let you in, turn you on so you can speak, to unmute your microphone. So David, welcome.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, and I appreciate y'all taking the time and listening to all the different comments and the input, and coming to the place that we are. And I think we made some good progress with this going forward. I guess one of the things too, so I'm just kind of curious, what kind of speed limits will we have in that area? And another thing, that's one question I was kind of wondering about. Plus, we're still kind of concerned about drainage issues in our yard, because even currently, we have wash down through there and everything gets really soggy and boggy. So I'm just kind of curious as to what kind of things are going to be done to help with that as well. And are we still on for the guys coming around to speak with us about the accommodations that we need to kind of be able to still park in our yards some way, and it's to help with that?
David, we're going to keep in touch with every individual property owner. OR Colon is the name of the company that does right-of-way acquisition. Now that we've changed the design so that we're going to construct everything in the existing right-of-way that's been there since 1953, there will be very few places, mostly on the corners. If you have a corner lot, we'll probably need to talk to you about acquiring a little bit of right-of-way because of the radius of the curb coming around the corner. But when we talk to you about the corner, it'll just be the sharp edge of that corner. It'll be what's out there to the road, and it'll be just enough to make the turn safer and better for the vehicles, and it'll improve the side street as well as Hemphill. Regarding the drainage, there are drainage issues in the area we're aware of, but what we're doing is taking what's an open ditch and converting it to piped. And in the process of piping it, we have to do calculations to understand the flow of water that we expect. So there may be and should be improvements when we're done, to the extent that if the ditch is not large enough today and we do calculations that say it needs a certain size pipe, that's what we'll be installing. It'll be the pipe large enough to carry the water that is for that design. And the design standards have been a 10-year storm. I'm inclined nowadays to go with at least a 25-year storm, because that seems to be more successful for everybody. It helps the system work better. It also helps us avoid flooding in the streets or flooding in your yards. So I hope I know I addressed two of the things, and then about getting with you particularly on what's needed in your particular yard. If you've been parking 2 vehicles end to end, and with the sidewalk on your side, if that makes it so that you really need to just park 1 vehicle and you need to double the width of your driveway, these are things we can talk about one at a time, and we'll be doing that fairly quickly, fairly soon. That should be starting in a couple of weeks. And that'll mean that we need to contact you individually and ask you about what you think you're going to need. We need to look at what you currently have on the ground, and we'll need to do a little bit of design work just to be able to include that improvement in the project. So there's work we'll have to do, but we will make contact with each of you, because that's what OR Colon will be doing, particularly for the temporary construction easement. The temporary easement means we're not going to need your land any longer than it takes to build the road. So we might have to use a little bit of your yard while we're building the road, and then put back some sod or straighten it up or whatever. But that's what the temporary means. We're not acquiring it permanently. Tyler, I see you here. You and I emailed successfully on some things. Would you like to go ahead and make your comment, and then we'll move along?
Sure. I appreciate you. Again, I want to reiterate what David said. Appreciate you guys listening to us so far, and having this meeting. Just a couple of points I think might be good for some other people who weren't necessarily on those emails between you and I. And I saw that someone has already put this in the chat, and I think Misty actually just answered. One thing people would like to know is which side the sidewalk would go on. I believe that's the west side, but that would probably be good to confirm. And when you mentioned the on-street parking, if you could maybe reiterate the availability of that between the three options. You mentioned needing one of the 32 feet options for street parking. So that would obviously take that down to option 2 or 3. I think that's important as we start to turn in these survey forms for our votes. That's a crucial piece of information that everybody needs to know. And something else that you mentioned this week in your email, I haven't turned in my form yet because all of the options say sidewalk on each side, but you mentioned just simply scratching that out and voting for your preferred option going forward. So just talk about that a little bit, if you would.
All right, Tyler. Good news on the form is we have an updated form. Craft and Toll updated it yesterday evening. We posted it today. If you go back to the city website, you'll see a new comment form, and it only has 3 options that have one sidewalk on one side of the road, and that is on the west side. And the reason it's the west side is 1.5 years, 2 years ago, when we first started looking at the project, that was the side where we can actually put the sidewalk and have a less amount of impact on people's front yards. It's not choosing one side over the other, it's choosing where the sidewalk can go and actually be blended in to the landscape, and without adding a lot of extra fill dirt or something like that. It's the better side to put the sidewalk for construction purposes. I see up at the top of mine, Deborah. I see a Deborah there. Deborah, would you like to speak, or are you just gonna listen in this evening? I see two Deborahs actually, but Deborah, you're nodding your head there, so you got the pink top on. Go ahead and Dennis, unmute Deborah there. We'll let her speak. You may have to unmute yourself, Deborah. There you are.
I have 3 comments.
Yes, ma'am.
Has anyone thought about the children in this neighborhood walking to that bus stop, opening this up for people to fly up and down through here? How are we going to get crosswalks for these children who go to the top of the hill to their bus stop? Because Pulaski County a couple years ago no longer comes into the neighborhood. The kids have to walk up there. And right now I'm looking about 9 kids standing outside that walk to that bus stop every morning. Rain, sleet, shine, snow. Has anybody thought about those kids getting across that busy street every morning with 7 o'clock traffic flying up and down through here? The second one is, has anyone thought about if you put it on the west side, This fire hydrant out here is going to have to be done something to. What are we going to do with that? If you widen the road and the fire hydrant's there, is it going to have to be removed again?
Well, if we need to relocate it a few feet for the sidewalk, that's a normal thing that we do anytime we do a street improvement. There's several things like that we have to do. So moving the fire hydrant would be part of the job, part of the contract. That's
So would it
not a difficult thing. It'll stay very close to where it is today. We just move it back a couple of feet, whatever we need for the sidewalk. Now, your comment about the bus stop and the crosswalks, thank you, because this is the first comment that we've heard specifically about that. And that's exactly what the meeting is for. As far as putting crosswalks, there's a certain science to that. I'll let the engineers address that in the design about how many crosswalks there should be. If we put them everywhere, the drivers tend to not pay attention to them at all. If we put them on the side streets and get the children so that they can get access to the sidewalk and then make their crosswalks on the side streets up and down Hemphill, then that may be a good accommodation. It may, hopefully what it'll do is come out safer at the end of the project. That would be a good thing. But as far as traffic is concerned and speeds, again, we can post it. The engineers will need to look at the right number for it, but 30 miles an hour or 25 miles an hour, either of those would be appropriate choices. And it may be that 25, given the number of children in the neighborhood and the fact that we do want to be as safe as possible, 25 mile an hour may be the appropriate number. We'll need to have the engineers look at that and look at it from the street standards standpoint. But I would think that 25 would be certainly a reasonable number that allows people to move through there. If they'll go 25 and keep moving, they'll be okay. And again, it'll be up to our police department to help us regulate that and control that. And maybe we just have to raise the fines until they learn not to drive too fast. We'll just have to work with that, Deborah.
My third comment is I've lived here over 30 years. The original plans you said was to make Hemphill the go through. The original plans was for it to be on width. Why did it change?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. I will look into that though. I don't know the answer about widths. I know that there's a spot in there where you can't get all the way through to the road that we're on, where our offices are. That, there's a certain amount of access you can make through the neighborhoods until you have to come all the way back out to Keel and go down Keel and then go back in. I'm not familiar enough to know exactly where that is. I do know that Willow Grove, which I don't think you can get to Willow Grove from your neighborhood. If you went down Cherry, you hit that and you wind up circling around back to Barbara or somewhere and back to Hemphill. If you go on over to Willow Grove, that Willow Grove is going to go through as well. Willow Grove will be connected through to Maryland.
But wouldn't it make more sense for it to be a straight shot than to have to cut off the corner and all that? Because I mean, they can make a straight shot to Hemphill, it would go all the way down.
Well, it matters about how Whitts comes into Maryland, and that's where we have to go with some existing houses and things through there. We'd have to look at that.
Okay. Because when you go at the end of our street, there's a house back there. So I mean, you're either going to have to do a roundabout, or they're going to have to come, like, make a block to come through.
Well, you've got a little, when you're going up Hemphill, you've got the little S curve, the little jog in the road. When we improve that, all it'll do is just kind of smooth it out a little bit. It'll stay that, and that's necessary because you can't go over to Short Hill, I think it is. You can't go to that one because if you go north, you go right through a bunch of houses that are built on Misty Cove, which comes off of Maryland. So Hemphill goes through, and it's a clear shot as far as no houses are in the way. Either way we go with anything, we have to cross the creek. So
Okay, see, when you're talking about the straightening out the curb, that's the kids' bus stop.
well, it won't be a big, and we're not straightening it so much. We're just smoothing it so that when we put in the curb and gutter, it's has a smooth drive to it. And at 25 miles an hour, that allows it to be a little. It doesn't have to be as big a deal as you might.
But
You know,
realistically, do you really think they're going to do 25 miles an hour? Realistically, especially if they're late for work. I mean, we already have people that fly up here that are late for work, but realistically, or the traffic is backed up on Brockington and they're frustrated, they're going to come over here and try to beat all that traffic. Realistically, I know they're not going to do 25 miles an hour.
Well, all I can tell you is,
and why I bought back here is because the development was never supposed to be developed back that way. That's why I bought. I had 2 small kids, and now I got 3 grandkids live here with me.
yes, ma'am.
That I have to worry about every day. Okay, be careful. I know it's just right up. It's a half a block up the road, but
Yes,
just
ma'am.
never got.
We will do the best that we can. And again, we'll depend on our police department because we have a very fine police department.
Yes, we did.
We actually have more police officers, I believe, for Sherwood than other cities have. I don't know if it's per capita, but I know that we're fully loaded with police officers. Let me put
Oh,
it
yeah.
that question came up a couple of months ago in another meeting, and it was interesting to hear from our police chief that we have extra officers for Sherwood, and we have lower crime in Sherwood.
Yeah, I agree. That's why we do.
That's the good news. Deborah, thank you. Now, if you can download the form, fill that form out and put your comments in writing. But if you can't download the form, just a piece of paper and mail it to our offices. We're at 31 Shelby.
I got it.
31 Shelby Drive. That's all you got to have on there. We'll get it.
Okay.
Well, Sherwood, Arkansas, and the zip code would help, but obviously, 31 Shelby is where our offices are, and we'll be any way that you want to send that to us, or even if you want to drop it off, there's a way you could do that. At the current time with COVID regulations, we're being very careful. We might have to meet you at the door, but we'll find a way to get it in the building.
Well, I would just appreciate y'all taking consideration for these children in this neighborhood because they've never had to worry about it before.
Yes, ma'am. All right.
Thank you for listening to me.
There's another Deborah, but I don't see you there. Now, next to Deborah is Russell's iPhone. Russell, I see you grinning. Why don't you go ahead and why don't we unmute Russell?
Let me leave and sign back in.
We can, if we got Russell there, can you unmute your phone, Russell? There you go. I can see you now. I can hear you. At least I think I can. Russell, you're not muted, but I can't hear you, sir. I can hear something. Yes, sir. Russell, I'm not hearing you right now, but you're unmuted, so I don't know what we have. May I come back to you in just a minute? We'll circle back just a second. Clyde Davis, I see Clyde on here. Clyde, would you like to comment?
Yes, I was wondering about the commercial traffic, like small business trucks, food trucks. As I noticed when I cross over Hemphill, going down Lantrip, the new pass through that goes behind Coles, you have a lot of commercial trucks now. And I do believe in the near future, once they find out that they can also come behind that street and come on the land trip down to Hemphill, they're gonna start sending commercial trucks to this area. And not only will that damage the street you'll be putting in with the weight, okay, then you have a problem in the evening time, people trying to get to other places before stores are closed, make deliveries. I was once in sales, and I know that a lot of salespeople, they'll try to make their last deliveries late in the evening before they get off. Now I got a feeling that's going to interfere with our neighborhood. So have you been focusing on the commercial trucks that are going to be coming through the area?
I have not paid special attention to that, but I will now that you've made the comment. Yes, sir. We'll look at that. There is a possibility of posting it local traffic only. There's a possibility of posting no trucks. What I'll need to do is let our engineers look at it and talk with them. And as far as the structure of the road is concerned, it'll be built to carry the weight. However, the 27-foot wide being, a narrower road, that's going to be something where, if we wouldn't be able to allow anybody to park on the road. And at 27 feet wide, again, if you've been down Country Club, you'll be able to compare what 25 feet is, because Country Club is only 25. Okay. But we have, every vehicle, and we got buses, trucks, cars, we have everything on Country Club today. And so that would be an idea of how tight it feels as far as being, it feels kind of like a narrow street. And that's what the 27 would feel like. Now, if we go with the 32 to allow parking on the road, that complicates it a little bit for trucks to come through there. And in that case, we might want to post it for local traffic only. But again, I'll need to talk with our engineers about it, but thank you for that. That's a great comment.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, sir. I know Deborah, I see your red and black blouse on there, or shirt. You have a comment to make, Deborah? You're still
there you go. Can you hear me?
I hear you. Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay. My main concern is the kids, and like Deborah brought it up about they need walkways, and we also need stop signs, because I'm thinking like Maxine Avenue, Hemphill needs a stop sign so them kids can cross.
Okay.
Because most of the kids are headed down this way towards the creek. They're getting down that way. And I'm thinking Barber Avenue or Barber Street, whichever one it is, it's also going to need stop signs on Hemphill, because they're going to be flying down this road. And these kids play at the little creek that is above Maxine. And they also play at the creek down at the end of the road. And my main concern is the safety for the children, really. And like he was talking about with the commercial traffic going through, that's a worry too with kids. Kids are kids.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Yeah. So the stop signs at the intersections, that's certainly a consideration. So we'll make a note of that and also put that in front of our engineers. Okay. Thank you very much. Russell, did you figure out the...
Yes, I did.
Well, I can hear you now. I can hear you great, Russell.
Well, hi. Yes, I've lived here since 2005, and the ditch over here at my house, I've had to call the city to come fill up this very corner on Hemphill and Inn, because it's washing out. And since I've lived here, it has gotten deeper. I've had to put chunks of concrete in that thing because the water's washing pretty good. Now, it doesn't happen all the time that ditch does fill up and it does overflow into my yard. And that happens during like a torrential type of rain, or a situation where the rain is very heavy for a few days, and that it'll actually fill up and sometimes even run over the road. It gets to be pretty thick over in that area. So you guys kind of needed to know that.
Yes.
Another thing is the, I tell people that are walking along the street, and I understand that the sidewalk's going to be on my side of the street, 207 Ann Avenue, and I don't have a problem with giving up a little extra room myself, because there are families, there are people that walk their dogs, and I tell them, they can't walk in that ditch. That ditch over here by my house is entirely too deep. They can't walk in it. So I tell them, walk on my property. Just please do. They feel uncomfortable with that because it is somebody else's property, but I at least offer. There are times that, I put debris on that side of the road, and, there's no place for them to walk. So they have to walk in my yard. And we're talking not just, when I say families, I'm talking families with kids in strollers, that kind of family. Yes. So yeah, that is a pretty good concern for me because I see it all the time. I want to put a fence up at my house, and I'm kind of just hanging loose, waiting for something to materialize on this. And I don't even know if I can put a fence up yet. So I'm kind of hanging out a little bit. I just found out now that there's some form that I should be filling out that I was unaware of until just now, which I will be getting and sending off.
Yes.
On the corner, that very same corner that I'm talking about, there is a main water meter, and the main water line does run on my side.
Okay.
So when you guys put that pipe in there, depending on the size of the pipe, you might be looking at the possibility of doing a main line too, because it is right there.
Yes, sir. The drainage will take precedence as far as the design goes, because drainage has to follow gravity, and we have to put the pipes at the right elevation. Once we know where that is, if there's a conflict with a water main, which is the pressurized pipe, that's possible to relocate it either deeper or route it around so that it doesn't conflict with the storm drains. So the first priority will be designing the storm drains and getting those so we know what they are. And then the next one will be routing any of those conflicts out of the way. Central Arkansas Water is the provider for everybody. And we are currently, actually Central Arkansas Water finished a project on East Maryland to move a 30-inch, I believe it was 30 inch, either 24 or 30-inch diameter main, and they relocated it last year. And we have them looking on Hemphill to make sure that their water mains are relocated where they need to be relocated. We had a pre-construction meeting a couple of days ago for Country Club because they're relocating the water main the entire length of Country Club. So these are big projects. They take a long time to build. I mean, like several months. Some of this may take a year and a half on some of our streets. But on Hemphill, I don't exactly know how long it'll take. We'll have to get get our bids in and make sure that we've looked at that, the bid documents, that whoever bids on it can meet that schedule is what I'm trying to say. So, there's some other things we need to look at. I should say there's certain other things that we can look at. Let me put it that way. And your drainage, what you just told me about your open ditch and with the erosion, you're not going to have the erosion problem when we're done at that same location. Now, we're not going to be able to pipe that all the way through your yard down to the creek, but we will be correcting things that are alongside the street today. And whenever we have a pipe that we put in the ground, when we get to the end of the pipe and we open it up back into open flow, into a ditch, we'll be putting in erosion controls that help to spread the water out and de-energize it and help to control any future erosion. So that's the good news on that. We'll be taking a very close look, and actually that will be different. As far as your fence permit goes, we're the ones that review your fence permits, so send them on in.
Okay, there is one other thing that you need to be aware of. That water does not go towards Little Caesars. That water goes east.
Yes, sir.
And when it goes east, I'm talking it goes fast.
Yes, sir. All right. Yeah, our engineers, they'll have that in their calculations already. Thank you. Thank you, Russell. Deborah, I see you raised up. Deborah, go ahead.
Okay, so the whole purpose of this new road is to keep traffic off of Brockington and Kill. But what about Maryland? There's no, because I was just over in Maryland looking at where it was going to go. So is your future plans to go all the way through Maryland from Stonehill and Miller's Crossing? Is that the whole plan of doing this new road?
Yes, ma'am. That road at Maryland, where Maryland has the gap that's not connected through right now, yes. We already have a contractor. We already have it ready to go to construction. We've already bid it. The city council approved the right-of-way documents Monday night. And right now we are just a few weeks away from actually beginning the construction to connect Maryland through. So you'll be able to drive from Brockington all the way to 107. And that'll be done way before we get Hemphill connected through.
Okay, I have another suggestion. You need to figure out something to do with the traffic on the Natural Remedy place, because it backs up Kill like all the way back.
Yes, ma'am. We are aware of that. That's that the owner of the property is aware of it. There's similar situations like that in Little Rock at other locations like that type of natural relief dispensary. So yeah, we're looking at it and we're working with the highway department and trying to do as much as we can. I know they made a change to their entrance and exits recently so that it's one entrance for coming in and a whole separate driveway to exit. So that's a change that they made on their property. I know that did help, but it doesn't help the huge load of traffic. Yes, ma'am.
Yep.
I've been wondering if they're running a sale or something sometimes. It's just kind of curious.
I don't know, but
I don't either.
Sometimes to go to turn on Hemphill, if you're in the turn lane, it's like people are, sometimes they block.
Yes, ma'am.
At the light trying to get in there, you know.
I see the other Deborah's hand up right quick. Deborah, you have something, and we'll move on and try to get some more people. We need to get some more comments.
I do, sir. You say it's to relieve the traffic off of Brockington, but how is it going to relieve the traffic crossing Hemphill, crossing Kill? I mean, if we have that stop light up there, it's going to create traffic back up on our streets.
Yes, ma'am. The goal is not to improve Brockington. That's not the goal. It's going to happen that people will choose to use Hemphill instead of Brockington. That's a natural thing because everybody's going to look for the shortest, their own personal shortcut. Some people are going to think they've discovered something new, and that's fine. But the purpose is not to unload Brockington. It's to give us more connectivity through the city so that we have better circulation. People have better options. There may be some people who will choose, instead of coming all the way down Hemphill to get on to Kiel, they may choose to go to Maryland, especially somebody that is going down 107. If they're headed that way to work in the mornings, they may decide to take Maryland to 107. So there's a car that's not driving. We don't know how to predict these things yet, but we do know, yes, the traffic will go up. That's true, but it's not intended to help unload Brockington. That's not the primary purpose.
It will help. I mean, it's going to mean people on 107 is going to come down Maryland to come down through here.
There's every scenario.
There's every scenario. All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
I see one gentleman all I see is log on, but you've got a red shirt and yes, sir, you're waving at me. Go ahead. You may have to unmute. Yes,
okay, sir. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
All right. Question is, I just bought this house a few years ago from the company that, I work for. And out here, I know you're going to put the sidewalk on the west side of the street. I've got a brick wall out here that's been there since Moses was in diapers. Will your sidewalk just butt up against the brick wall, or is that going to have to be taken down? And then on the side streets, I've noticed that it looks like they're fixing to widen Callaway. They're fixing to widen that one into the same, 25 feet wide. How far down is the sidewalk going to go on the side streets?
I don't know anything about Callaway. I haven't heard anything on that one, and I'll have to check into that one. And as far as the brick wall goes, I don't know about that either. I haven't looked at where the sidewalk is relative to it, but there are times when we can place the sidewalk at the 4 feet buffer from the back of the curb, and then sometimes we have to move into 3 feet or 2 feet and then back out. So there's ways to adjust things. Usually the big adjustment is for some ancient tree that's there that is better served to keep the tree. You know what I mean? And
that's
across we can move the sidewalk 2 feet.
That's across the street.
Right. We don't fight those things. We look at them as just a minor issue, and we'll move the sidewalk in and out when we need to.
I'm just, worried that I was going to have to, tear that down, and I'm having some concrete poured in my garage. Are they going to, when they come through here and widen it, are they going to continue the driveways, to the street, or
yes?
How is all that going to work?
Yeah, all of the driveways will be. You'll have a turnout when we come through with the curb and gutter. There'll be an opening in the curb and gutter, and it'll go into a concrete apron, and the concrete apron will be poured up to the edge of the right of way.
Okay,
that's where we operate. So if you've got a driveway that's concrete or asphalt, if you've got one that's already construction, we'll leave what we can. If it's broken up and we need to replace parts up to, especially anything in the right of way, all of what's in the right of way will be either in great shape or brand new when we get done.
Perfect. That's why I was asking about the side streets too, because where it looks like your right of way stops right where my concrete does, and then there's like gravel to a 5-10 foot section of gravel to the street. If they're going to come all the way around the corner, I don't want to have spend the money on having that done now, when you guys are just going to come through and do it here in the near future.
Right. And we'll be able to discuss that in particular with you when we come through with the easements, getting your signature on those temporary construction easements. That'll be the time to basically nail that down with you. And again, when you said something about, do you have to move something, anything that's in the right of way, we're taking care of that 100%.
All right.
So if it's something that's in the way that we need to move, we're taking responsibility for the whole thing.
Perfect.
Yes, sir. I see Joe with a letter A. Joe A. Did you have a comment, Joe? I can't see you, but I can see your identifier there. We'll give you a second to unmute if you want to. Yes, sir.
Just listening for the time being. Thank you.
Did you have a comment?
Not at this time. I'm just watching and listening right now.
Okay. Thank you very much. I see one, Amy, AIMEE.
I put mine in the chat already. Thank you.
Okay. Fantastic. M. Preston. Mr. Preston.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I sent in a comment form, I want to say maybe a week or so ago. So I did voice my concerns to the city. Hopefully that was received via email. But I want to say that most of the things that, I wanted to make sure everybody's aware of kind of similar to what some of the other people have already said, for as, you know, children playing in the neighborhood, especially now, you know, a lot of them, they are in areas that, you know, seem like the street is part of their playground area. So, you know, with increased traffic, you know, thinking about how that plays into, you know, like, you know, the increasing the risk of being hit by traffic coming through. The people that live in this neighborhood, they know that these children are out here and that they're playing, so they're aware of slowing down. Even if they don't see them in the street, they know that they could be close to the creek that when they're passing through that area, and not necessarily waiting till they actually see the children before they start slowing down. So just, you know, little things that, you know, being in the neighborhood, you know, folks in the neighborhood are aware of, and people that aren't in the neighborhood, you know, it's not on their mind. That would kind of be like kind of my top priority. I mean, I have a 10-year-old right now, you know, out here. So yes. I have a couple other children, but they're older, so I don't worry about them as much. The other thing is, you know, like parking. You know, right now, it look like a lot of the neighbors are going to be, I don't know if they're going to be parking on the side of their house or what, but, you know, that seemed like to be a major concern. I mean, for us, you know, I have 4 drivers in my home.
Yes, sir.
And with 4 drivers, I mean, I got to have 4 cars. So I have a garage, which I'm blessed to have a garage, versus some of my other neighbors who may not have a garage. But you know, I can only put 2 cars in the garage, and that means I have to have 2 outside. So, you know, I'm just hoping that the city considers taking up the minimum amount of space, you know, while they're, you know, putting these things in place, because I'm hoping that from what I've been listening, it's going to be 1 sidewalk, the minimum amount of road, and a buffer. So that way, you know, we don't have to be worried about, is my car sticking out on the sidewalk or the buffer or whatever. So yes. Those are the 2 main things that I wanted to make sure that the city is aware of and that they take into consideration, because I probably would have never purchased a home over here if I had known that my house was not sitting back far enough from the right of way, because my home right now, for what I paid for it, I think the value would be less if someone wanted to consider curb appeal, if they want to think about, you know, do I have the amount of parking? You know, if they're coming from the city, maybe they're okay with it. But if they're coming from, you know, some areas in Arkansas, that probably would be something that they would consider. You know, how much space do I have for parking, getting in and out of my house? So my resale may not be as great if I do decide to sell. So those are the kind of things that, you know, are concerns for me. And I hope that, you know, the city does, you know, consider the smallest amount of, you know, improvement. So that way I can at least at some point in time, if I want to sell the home, I could be able to do that.
Yes, sir. My familiarity with these improvements, I understand that you're in the neighborhood, you live there, and you've got your perspective on it, which you're very comfortable. You understand the dynamics of the neighborhood. From someone outside the neighborhood that's totally unfamiliar with it, to drive in, curb and gutter and sidewalks brings property values up. That's a general statement. And I would expect that at the end of the project, you know, 6 months, a year from now, people are comfortable with it, I would actually expect your property values to go up because of the improved drainage, the presence of the curb and gutter, and the presence of the sidewalk, because nowadays people are much more interested in walking, especially since last year and the pandemic hit. We've noticed in our neighborhoods in Sherwood, where we used to see, like on Oak Brook, for instance, I noticed, I would see 2 or 3 people each time I drove through there, someone walking a dog, a mother pushing a stroller, something like that. And there's sidewalks on both sides of Oak Brook. And it would be, 1 or 2 people each time I drove through. After the pandemic hit and folks were staying at home, by April or May of last year, that 3 or 4 was up to 30 and 40. It was an incredible amount of increase. And we also see children, families on bicycles, particularly 2 young boys that seem to come through quite often off of Thornhill with their bikes and their fishing poles coming to the pond at City Hall, right out the mayor's window out of City Hall. So, there's a lot of, Sherwood's a wonderful place for families, and we know that, but it's also an improvement for people coming to look to Sherwood as a place to live when they see the curb and gutter and the sidewalk, because they know they have a sidewalk, rather than having to walk in Russell's yard, which he was kind enough to offer to people. But I agree with him that sometimes you feel uncomfortable walking in someone's yard, and the sidewalk helps to define that. I see 2 Amy's. There's an Amy, no, I'm sorry, 2 Alicia's. There's an Alicia and Alicia A. I don't see Alicia muted. Alicia, are you ready to comment? How about Alicia A? You'll need to unmute. And I see Alicia in the chat column as well. So if you're happy with the chat column, that's good for us. I do see a telephone. Someone's on the phone. Your last 4 is 3390.
Yes, sir.
Would you like to comment?
Yeah, I would. I had a couple of questions. I'm a homeowner over there on Hemphill, which I have a corner lot.
Okay.
And I noticed that the stakes are pretty far into my yard and are going to be taking quite a bit of my property. Now, when this originally started, my understanding was there was going to be a bike path on each side of the road, but I understand that's been changed.
Correct.
Okay, so will they go out there and restake?
Yes. Now the restake.
Okay, when will that happen?
We're going to take your comments, and again, for everyone who can, please submit them in writing, because writing puts them on a record for us. And the only record we have of this meeting is the recording. And it's difficult to go through there and pick up these comments again. I know we have one of our engineering firm engineers is on this, and I know Sam's taking lots of notes. So between him taking notes, Dennis and me, we're paying attention, but to be sure you get your comment to us, and the best way is to get it to us in writing. Now, we have taken out all the bike lanes, and as far as folks walking or biking or for the recreation part of it, there will be a trail 1 block away from you underneath the large power lines. That'll be called at the present, it's called the Power Line Trail. We got a $100,000 grant to pursue that, and it'll start with engineering design and some property acquisitions and such, but and it'll take a little while. I don't know exactly when the construction will start, but it's happening. And
where will that be?
Are you familiar with the large Entergy power lines that are east of Hemphill, about a block?
Yes.
Right underneath the power lines.
Okay.
That's where they'll be located.
Okay. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I've got a note here, Brandy Sykes. You've asked to make a comment, or you have a question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I am on the side where the sidewalk will be. And I put this in my comments, but I'm kind of concerned about it from a cost standpoint. I have 2 trees on either side of my yard. One is close to the street. I feel like it will be taken out. The other tree is set back a little ways, and I don't think, per the current plans, as far as the measurements and such, that it will be taken out, because I think it's a little bit too far back from where the sidewalk will be. The question with that is, if during the process of installing everything that the roots to the tree get cut and the tree dies, will the city come remove that at the city's dime, not my dime?
I understand. Well, first of all, I'll need to look at that particular tree, and we'll do everything we can to not disturb it. But you're correct about the construction and the sidewalks and cutting those roots. There are times when it can damage them. For sidewalks, it's not as much of an impact, and there's ways we can actually be creative when we go around, especially a very what we call a charter tree, or one of the very old, like an old oak tree that's very important to the neighborhood or to you individually. Part of this question would be, if it's in the right of way, we can certainly take care of it. If it's on your private property, that would be something where we would need to combine the impact of the sidewalk and where it's located and the root zone, and combine that with the size of the tree and also the temporary construction easement as to whether or not we would be able to include removing that tree as part of the easement agreement. But that'll be an individual question. Just hang on to it, and when we get to your house and when we get to our consultants get to you, we can address that. Okay. I see a Doug. Doug, do you have a comment? Just a second to unmute. I know sometimes it's hard to find that, especially if somebody happens to be driving. Notice we're still holding pretty strong at 28 participants. That's about what I expected, and this is really good. All right, let's move on to, there's a telephone number ending in 6347. Do you have a comment?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
All right, this is Michael. I live down at 613 Hemphill, close to the stream. And my comments kind of border or pick up on the stop sign down there at the end of Hemphill where it hits Cherry. If there isn't a stop sign, the accidents are going to be probably at least once a week, because people are going to come through to go on through to the rest of the subdivision, and they're just going to totally ignore, if they're coming up Hemphill to go to Keel, if there's no stop sign, people going on down around that curve on Cherry, it's just going to be a mess. So I hope there is a stop sign planned for that, for the end of Hemphill at Cherry.
Okay.
And you answered the other question, is Maryland going to go through? Because right now, if Maryland didn't go through, this whole project would only benefit the north side of the creek.
Well, it is definitely going through, because we've already got the contractor selected, and they've been given a notice of award. They're getting their legal documents together, and it'll be probably another month before we see construction, but it's going to be very soon. You're going to see construction started on connecting Maryland through.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I'll be sending another letter on my final thoughts as far as the width of the street.
Okay.
To the Planning Commission.
All right.
Excuse me.
Thank you. I see Regina Washam. Regina, do you have a comment? All right. I'll move on over to Doug. Did we already listen to Doug? I'm sorry. Losing track of names.
Doug can't talk right now, but Russell has a comment.
Oh, sure. Go ahead. Russell? Yeah.
Yes, I'm here. Some time ago, you and I had a conversation where I ended up having to replat my property. And that cost me a pretty good amount of money. Depending on what the city does, my question is, are the homeowners going to get a replat of their property lines after the fact? Because when a homeowner goes to resell their house, they usually are asked for a plat. As a good for instance, when I bought this house, I asked for a plat, and that's when I found out that the house actually sat 4.5 feet on the other property, which they gave me a little bit of a price break on in order for me to buy the house and the property. So my question is this going to be part of negotiations where they're going to give us drawings, new drawings, if they encroach in on the existing plats?
That would be probably, if you've got the ditch and the drainage, if we need some room to put in drainage pipes where that open ditch is, that might be an opportunity to acquire more easement. And we would be, if we're adding something to the drawings, yes, we can share that improved drawing or the current drawing with you. For most of the street, we're not widening it. We're physically widening the street, but the 50-foot right-of-way is nothing new. It's been there since 1953. So if you're on a corner lot, we might be asking for some permanent right-of-way. And when we do that, yes, we can provide the redrawing your boundary. We can do that.
Well, that's really wonderful. I like that.
Well, I mean,
it cost me a little bit of money for that.
Well, sure, right. But I mean, these are things where if we are making a change to the legal boundary of your property, then we will be. I mean, if we're making the change to it, we can provide you with a new drawing for that lot. Yes, sir.
Great. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Clyde, had you, Mr. Davis, had you waved at me a couple of times, or did you have any other comments? You're muted, Clyde. Now
muted. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was kind of concerned about the utilities.
Yes,
I know there's going to have to be some power lines moved and stuff. And where my yard, in my yard, I have AT&T, telephone, and Xfinity in my yard.
Yes.
So I'm pretty sure this probably have to be readjusted, right?
I don't know to the extent it'll have to be adjusted, but I know that AT&T is fully aware of the project. I've talked with their engineer that does the design work for relocations. We talked with him when we were talking about Maryland and Country Club and Hemphill and all of these, and he's fully aware of it. And the good news on Hemphill is that there's not the complicated telephone equipment that goes in those large boxes, the tall cabinets that might be head high. There's not any of that type of equipment there, so that makes it a much simpler project for AT&T to do any relocations if they need to move a pedestal or something like that. Yeah, definitely, they are fully aware of the project, and we're working with them to be sure that everything they have is accommodated, and that they actually have an opportunity to move their utility out of the way before the contractor comes in digging up the road.
So you guys, to my understanding now, I'm on the east side, and I have Entergy, and I think on the west side there's North Little Rock Electric. Am I not correct?
There is a line break in there, and I don't know exactly where the dividing line between the two is, but we're in contact with all of those utilities. We've already worked with North Park Electric on one, and yeah, we've got them all contacted.
Okay, I can make sure.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Yes, sir. David, I see you waving. Are you coming or going or?
I just wanted to wave. No. No, I had a question. You know, I know we're talking about the flow of traffic through there, and you know, I'm still concerned about that. You know, especially at the peak times in the morning, the evening. Not so much the evening as probably the morning when everybody's trying to get out. And I know that you can't predict, you know, what the traffic will be like or how much flow will be through there. But I've just got an idea that once people do discover that, you know, they think, oh, I'll hop over here. You know, if you want to get out of the big line of Brockington and come through there, you know, the kind of what recourse are we going to have trying to get out if that traffic is prohibiting us from just getting out of the road, if it's backed up or, you know, lined up there and trying to get out. Also, you know, because once it's done, it's done. So then what's the recourse on all that to assist the neighborhood in that matter? Also, kind of curious, once this project gets going, and of course, you know, limited space anyway, and they're going to be working around on the street, around close to our yards and everything, especially when they will develop the curbing and things, getting in and out of our driveways and different things. Just kind of wondering about all of that as well.
Okay, it may be a little, it'll be an imposition, okay? It'll be a little bit of a, require some patience, maybe for as long as 2 weeks. And let me explain what I mean by that. We will have in the contract that the contractor has to maintain the road open. In other words, you got to be able to get in and out of the neighborhood all through the contract. Now, the construction period. There may be a time where they have to detour traffic if they're putting in a cross drain, one of the large pipes for drainage underneath the road. They have to close and cut all the way across Hemphill to put that in. They may have to establish a detour where you have to go, you know, down a block and up a block and back around. But as far as getting to your driveway, everybody should be able to maintain access to your driveway through the entire project. Again, there might be, you know, a couple hours one day, it might be a half a day, there may be something. A lot of times we will pour half of a driveway, in other words, halfway across so that you can still get in and out, and then pour the other half. There's ways we can plan to do that. In some cases, you know, maybe it'll work that we could actually find parking at your next door neighbor for a day so we can get the work done. When we pour concrete, what we want
that'd be very limited. That'd be a tricky thing with the problem we already have, though. I mean, finding some places to park.
Sure.
So that's why I was asking.
I understand your question. Yeah, and with the driveway aprons, when we pour that driveway from the back of the curb up towards your house to the edge of the right of way, all of that concrete's fresh, and it really needs 7 days to cure, to get, you know, the strength that it needs to hold up just a regular normal vehicle. So, you know, that's why I say there are situations where, you know, maybe we don't have to do any work on your driveway. Maybe we have to do all the work on the driveway, but we will try as best we can to accommodate you, you know, for that. And it might, like I said, there might be one time in the project where there's a few days where it's a real imposition. But we'll try to at least let you know when it's coming. You won't wake up some morning and see them sitting there and go, oops, I can't get out. I mean, we'll stay in contact. All right, that'll be part of our contractor's responsibility, is to communicate. Okay. Yeah, Deborah, I see you. Let me check right quick, Deborah. Just give me just a second, and I'll come right back to you. I see telephone number ending in 9310. Did you have a comment? I'm not getting a real quick response, so I'll just move over to the next one I see is phone number ending in 2146. Is there a comment there? All right, I'll move on over to the next one I see is a 0622. Any comment from that telephone? All right, I'm trying to be sure that I don't miss anybody. I've got 2 screens worth of people here. We're at 29 participants. That's fantastic. Please forgive me is it Kobe? Is that the right? Do you have a comment? All right, we'll just keep moving back around. I think I've gotten around to most of them. If I'm missing you, if you're able to put something in the chat column to say you want to speak and I haven't recognized you yet, or if you've got the hand, I see the hand on Preston. Let me come back through to Deborah. Deborah, you just were waving your hand.
Yeah, I got a real quick question. Is
Okay.
our property taxes going to go up since we're going to be connected to Maryland and, Miller Crossing and all that?
That is a fantastic question, and I have absolutely no idea.
Well, you're not much help.
Well, I'm not much of a tax collector either, so maybe that's good for both of us. Deborah, I had never thought of that. Now, if your property is improved and the property value goes up, yeah, there would be an impact. That would be part of the equalization board, when they come, the county assessor's office, when they look at it. I absolutely don't know how to respond to that other than I hope they don't go up. But then again, if your property value goes up, maybe that's not the end of the day, But that's a great question. I'll try to research that and come up with a response. I think it will be minor if there is one, but it would be due to the fact that you've got curb and gutter and sidewalk as an improvement. That's what it would be. I know that in Lonoke County, where I live, concrete, if you have concrete, you are taxed for having concrete. If you have gravel or asphalt, you're not taxed the same way as if you have concrete. I don't understand the logic there, but my driveway back to my shop is gravel. So that's the way I address that little tax increase. So, but thank you. That's a good question. We'll try to get there. Preston, I see your yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I was just wondering about. I think Clyde had mentioned about the utilities. So I was just wondering, are y'all going to put the same like poles up, or are y'all going to do improvements to the power lines as well?
Well, we don't control the power companies. I mean, that's their utility and it's their infrastructure. If there's a pole that needs to be replaced and they're moving it anyway, I'm sure they'll improve that, but there's not any plan to put utilities underground or anything like that. No, sir. That would be hugely invasive. And I know that would be an improvement. I mean, there'd be a lot of good things from that, but that would really be a big deal. And that would come from the utility themselves as to, how they would do that. And at this time, none of our projects include taking power from the pole and putting it underground. We don't have that anywhere. Good news on the AT&T side, for utilities that are older where there's copper in the ground, if they do have to move something, they may choose to come in and install fiber. That's what they did on Maryland, where we're doing the widening project. And they went in and there's a lot of existing copper in different ages and different sizes. And they went in with fiber and they improved their system at the same time they reduced the amount of stuff in the ground. So it really has been an opportunity for them. And I think there's some places where they were able to take them from the aerials, overheads, and put them in the fiber underground. Again, that's the magic that AT&T and Windstream and Comcast, all of those folks do. But if you've got a power pole today, it's probably going to be exactly where it is, or maybe a few feet difference, just to accommodate the back of curve. Man, we're really getting around to everybody. I'm glad. David Barnes, you got your hand up.
Yeah, he mentioned these utilities, and it kind of brought up a question. I think that I had talked with the mayor a few weeks ago. But, you know, when you're traveling down Hemphill, that is a pretty dark street. Up on the front part and down the back part, 500 back, it's a pretty dark street there. And I was just kind of wondering, you know, where you're, you know, create more space there and, you know, bring traffic through there. Just, I mean, probably more safety concerns too, of having probably more traffic on that street. Are there any intents to put more lighting down through there? Because I mean, it's dark, pretty dark street. And I mean, and more traffic, that I see that could be kind of more of an issue through there as well. And also, I was kind of wondering up on the front part there where Little Caesars is, you know, we're talking about kind of traffic coming through there. And sometimes that Little Caesars, you know, they're limited access to their drive-through. You know, they're backed out sometimes onto the street. Kind of wondering what kind of problems that's going to cause there with congestion as well.
You know, right in there, I don't know, you know, that's already improved. I think they've got the curb and gutter there and the sidewalk. So I don't know how much change there will be. I know that talking with the engineers, part of this consideration is how does Hemphill connect to Keel, and do we need you know, additional turn lanes? Do we, you know, what do we actually need in there? And I'll have to go back and review it with them. But that's definitely a question that we need to be sure we got a good answer for you on that one. And that's right. You know, with regard to the pizza place, as well as looking at the traffic, at the lighting, the street lighting. There's some standards for street lighting, and we can look at those and make sure that we're up to standard.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Gosh, we're doing good. I'm really glad. It seems like we've gotten around to everybody maybe once. If I haven't gotten to you, Clyde, I see you there motioning. If I haven't gotten to you and I'm just missing you, if you could maybe mention it in the chat column, and one of my staff will help me recognize you. Clyde, did you have something else?
Okay. Yeah, I want to pick up where Dave was talking about the lighting.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
I was wondering, has the engineering department, when they're going to redo the lighting on the street, are they going to get rid of HID lighting, the old-fashioned HID lighting like high pressure soda and so forth? Are they going to go with LED lighting that will last longer and burn longer and be cheaper?
If there's any new lighting, yes, they'll all meet the new standards, which is the LED. If it's a replacement,
okay,
to move a pole, you know, for consistency, I think it would be prettier if the lighting was all the same temperature, and that, you know, the temperature of it affects the color of the light. So whether it's, you know, the white light or yellow light or whatever else. So yeah, I'm a real fan of the LED. I really like the daylight look to that, and it is it's a big improvement.
It burns hot, but it's real clear.
Yeah, Entergy had a program.
It burns real hot, but it's clear.
Entergy had a program for years on where they funded a lot of changeovers, and I'll have to go back and look into that. But I mean, obviously, we'll have to make sure we know who we're talking to, whether it's Entergy or North Rock Electric. But and if it's one on one side and one on the other, well, we'll just work with both of them. But yeah, certainly if we add any lighting, it'll be the newest, latest technology, and hopefully pretty. We don't regulate pretty,
Yeah.
but hopefully it'll be nice.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I may have asked for Ryan Watson. Did I ask? I don't recall, Ryan. And it's okay if you don't have a comment. It's great if you sent it in writing. Those are all fantastic. Is there someone that I've missed? I know we said we'd go for a couple of hours, and it doesn't mean we have to, but I sure don't want to cut anyone off. I'm still seeing one hand raised, but I can't connect the hand to Brandy. Yes.
Hey again. I'd asked it in the chat, but it hadn't been answered yet. Do we have a time, and this may have already been answered before I hopped on the call, I was a little late. Do we have a time frame of when this is set to start, how long it will take, and which end of the road is going to start first, or what the, I guess, plan is for what happens first as far as, utilities getting moved or ditches being dug? What's that time frame, I guess?
Anything underground, the utilities is the first thing to be relocated. So if it's a power pole or an AT&T line, water, anything like that, they will be doing their work first. Once they're out of the way, then I don't know where the contractor, we haven't even advertised it yet, but at the point that we advertise it and select a contractor, we'll be able to visit with them about exactly how they would like to proceed with it, because it's their responsibility to maintain access to your property and safety and other things. So they may have a really good plan for how they get, especially the large drainage pipes, to get those large pipes in first and get up to where pretty well the last part of the project is putting in the sidewalk. So the curb and gutter, certainly the curb and gutter won't go down until all of the drainage pipes are in the ground. So that's kind of the approach. Now, as far as starting, the 2018 sales tax bonds that have already, the amount that's been bonded so far is $22.5 million. The deadline for spending that money, or at least a portion of it, is November the 28th or 29th of this year. So the end of November is when I'm supposed to have a lot of money spent. That means that I would like to start tomorrow if I could. We will have to go back in and finalize the drawings based on the selection of whether it's 27 feet wide or 32 feet wide. But once we've got that nailed down and we get our drawings updated, we will get it advertised. It takes about 3 weeks. We usually allot 3 to 4 weeks for the contractors to respond and develop their bids. And then we have the bid opening. Following the bid opening, it takes another 2 weeks to 4 weeks to get all of the legal documents done, the insurances, bonding, all that sort of thing. So if we could advertise tomorrow, 1st of February, say, if we could advertise then, it would be 1st of April before we could really see construction beginning. In the meantime, the utilities will each have their own contractors. So water, they may start moving that, whenever that would happen before the street work was done. So I really can't say when it will start, but I'm hoping that it starts really, really soon, because we're going to need, plenty of time to get it built. It's a lot of factors involved here. I don't know the number of days that are allocated in the contract. Sam, do you know the contract days that you've got so far?
Richard, I think in our contract documents, I think we've got allocated 270. That doesn't mean that's exactly what it takes, but that would be a maximum limit for a period of construction. A contractor could certainly do it much sooner. Okay,
so 270 days, we're basically talking 9 months. So if we could get started in March, we've done by New Year's. So it's not something that should drag on for 2 or 3 or 4 years by any means. That should not happen. It should be something that once it gets started and we see the equipment moving, that within 9 months, that we would be totally gone, and your grass would be starting to grow back, and kids will be riding their bicycles on the sidewalk, which that's okay. We can live with that. I see the 3390. Did you have a comment?
I did. You just answered a lot of my questions about timeframes and so forth, but I had another question. When will we be, as homeowners, contacted about the property that will be taken, and when will we be contacted about that?
It's probably going to be another month before we can do that, because when we finalize the street design, either 27 feet or 32 feet, that'll affect a little bit of the radiuses at the corners, at the intersections. So we got to get that figured out and nailed down, and then we've got to get our the right-of-way acquisition documents updated. We had all of them ready, and that was based on that 55 feet. Now we know we're not doing that. So we're going to have to go back through all of those, and there's 50 or 60 of them at least that we'll have to go through and update them to get them where they ought to be. So yeah, it's going to be at least a month, I would say, before you hear from anybody.
Okay, I also have another question. So, which I have a corner lot, like I told you before. So they're going to be taking property from me all the way around, basically 3 sides of my house. Okay.
How would that?
So my concern, excuse me?
I'm not familiar with that particular location, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, because there's stakes all down 3 sides of my house, because I live on a corner lot.
Okay.
So my question is, I'm a little concerned about, they're going to be changing the landscaping of my property. I mean, I guess the contractors or the architects are going to make sure that as far as water runoff, that won't be an issue then, I take it?
That's correct.
Okay, because I'm a little concerned about that.
No, the water runoff, the only thing that should happen is that you see improvements. If we make something worse, we've really done a bad job. But you should see improvements. And
okay,
for the most part, if you've already got a yard that's Bermuda, when we go through and work, in the right of way, and when we're filing out and finishing up, usually what we do is sod everything. So if you've got Bermuda, we'll put in Bermuda sod. If you got zoysia, we'll put in zoysia. We'll leave the situation in the best shape that we possibly can. And our plan is always, to be absolutely fair and correct, and do the right things. That's what we plan to do.
Okay. That sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes, Tyler?
Yeah, Richard, I've got a question for you about the comment forms or the surveys. I know you've put out the new ones, but what is that process like in terms of transparency? What is the deciding factors?
I lost you, Tyler. You went mute on me for something wiggle. There you go.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry about that. I was just asking about the transparency and the record keeping of the comment forms, and how that factors into the decision making as to which option is implemented. For example, if every resident votes on option 2, is that the one that's going to go through? Is that weighted 50% with your inputs? And again, is that going to be made public in terms of X number of residents voted for this option, X number for this option, etc.?
Anything that we do is subject to FOI. So all I can tell you is that everything we have is open to the public. It's transparent. The things that are not transparent are things like personnel issues that have to go to human resources. But as far as engineering goes, and anything to do with street designs, anything that's coming into our office, yes, the way to make that available to you, I really hadn't thought that through very much, but on the forms themselves, the ones that are submitted to us, digitally, we'll have those, and we can put those in a file folder and make them available. So where you could click on it and read everybody's comments. That's certainly something that we're capable of doing. So, to be able to answer your question, I mean, we're always ready to produce information when we need to produce it. As far as weighting is concerned, the weighting of your responses, as far as, is it 50% local input with 50% street committee input? I don't know that. I don't know that we don't have. I can tell you now, we don't have a plan for weighting anything. What we have a plan for is to see what is the community, what's the neighborhood's response. And if it happened to be 90% for one thing, I would think that that's a pretty good indication that you all know what you want. The other thing to look at then would be to look at the engineering, look at the standard street requirements that we have, and make sure that everything is lining up. And right now, I don't know that we've got any problem with any of those designs being implemented. It's just a matter of making sure we've identified the pros and the cons, and that we have made you fully aware of what the pros and cons are. The narrower street, you got more yard. The wider street, you got less yard. As far as having that open ditch is concerned, whenever we get through with the curb and gutter, you may very well wind up with more grass to mow at the end of the day because of that ditch is gone. So yeah, I see Russell shaking his head. You don't want to mow more grass, but then again, that's why I'm saying at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, it may not actually be what you are imagining it could be. And I know you would imagine the worst, because you should. You should be, suspicious, and that's fine. But for me to answer every question decisively, I really can't answer everything decisively, but I can tell you that, yeah, we'll make the stuff available. We'll scan in the paper that's mailed to us. We'll scan it in. We'll put it in the folder.
Sure.
You can upload that to our city website, and you can read every one of them.
Sure. Well, I hope
we will. We'll take stuff to the street committee, and our street committee, will have some input on it. And then the very final decision is made by the city council when they either award they give us the approval to go out for bids, or they award the project to a certain, contractor. I think, Sam, are we looking at $3.5 million for this project?
Pretty close, I think. With everything considered, we're just right around 3.
Yeah. So, when we're dealing with that much money, something that large, these things go before the city council and they approve. So at the point that it's approved and they say, yeah, the notice of award should be given to so-and-so contracting company, at that point, everything's nailed down. And how we get to that point, there will be engineering input, there will be residents input, there will be standards. We'll look at our standards that we have. There will be street committee input. The mayor will look at it. Our mayor will make, she'll help us, make sure that we haven't missed something. And then the final decision will be at the city council.
Sure. I just the only reason, not that I necessarily want to read the exact form that my neighbors turned in, just in an example, if 90% of the community votes one way and another way is implemented, I just would like some sort of record so we know that our voices are being listened to. I know we may not have the final say so. Right.
Well, and there's other, we will be making sure that we haven't missed something, especially looking at like fire department. Does the fire department have some particular requirement? I don't know of one that we've missed. I think we've paid attention to everything we should. I don't know of anything with garbage pickup. I don't know that, there's any real difference between 27 feet wide and 32 feet wide for garbage pickup, but I do know for a fact there's a difference if something's parked on the road. Because if the garbage truck can't get to your garbage cart, then you know, that's always a question. Why did somebody, you know, why did you not pick up my garbage? Well, somebody parked their car in a way. You know, that's where we have just so many things to consider, and there's so many ways it could go right, so many ways it could go wrong. What we really have to do is go by our standards and look at the standards, and then when there's a choice of 27 feet or 32, and it has to do with whether or not you park on the street, there are safety considerations there. So we need to listen to our police and emergency personnel and fire department. But, you know, if it comes down to just flipping a coin and saying, well, it could be either one, if you guys were the tipping point that says, well, it could be 32, it could be 27, and we really don't care, it's not a care. We really don't have a requirement for one or the other. Then I would say that the neighborhood would be the tipping point. I mean, that's just my comment, but obviously we've got, you know, street committee and others that need to weigh in on this. So there's a lot of other people looking at it, a lot of other conversations. But yours is happening tonight, very important. Still got 19 minutes left that I see. Yeah, Deborah?
Okay, I heard that there was going to be where you couldn't park on the road anymore. Do you know anything about that?
That's not a decision, but there's a consideration. If the curb and gutter is only 27 feet wide, you know, if the street's 27 feet wide, there's not enough room to park for you to park a car on your side of the road and the neighbor across the street to park a car on their side of the road and then get the fire truck in between you. Okay. That's where we run into the real problem. So, you know, if it was 27 wide, we may have to look at just, you know, a no parking situation where it's safer if there's no parking on the street. If parking on the street is something that everybody says, yeah, we all need it, then we could look at the 32 feet wide, and that makes it more reasonable to think that you could have somebody parked on one side of the street and a car on the other side. You could still get the fire truck, the garbage truck, you know, ambulance, whatever. You'd still get those folks through there.
Well, I was going on, I think it's Johnson at Stone Hill, and they were parked like on the curve by one of the houses. This big old truck was. Well, you couldn't see past the truck if anything was coming around that curve. So that's why I was asking, you know, somebody told me that they were going to pass a law to where you couldn't park on the street anymore. So that's why I was just asking.
I haven't heard that one. There's been some discussions about, you know, parking in the front yard and whether that detracts from the neighborhood. Is that something that there should be a place in the front yard that's reserved to just be your front yard, and then, you know, parking on your private property should be in the driveway or on the side of the house or all. We've had some conversations.
Okay.
But right now I think we're still in the conversation time. But no, there's not anything that I've heard of where there's a ruling about no parking on the street. I haven't heard that one. David?
She may have heard the same thing that I was actually told by one of the aldermen that there was possible some works where some were pushing towards maybe going that direction, where it would be kind of like a Sherwood rule to forbid parking on the street. So that may be where she's coming from, having heard the same thing. I mean, that's what I was told. So that was coming down. Possibly.
You know, parking on the street is one thing. Parking, you know, just somebody mentioned earlier 4 vehicles. I think, was it you, Clyde, that mentioned? Maybe somebody mentioned 4 drivers in the family. At one time, I had 5. I've got 3 kids, and they're close enough in age that one had just started college, and the other 2 were high school and junior high. And at one point, you know, everybody had their own vehicle, and I had 5 to deal with. Fortunate to have had a driveway that was on the side of the lot and an end loading garage to the house, so that, you know, that left a lot of room, you know, down the side of my property to be able to stay off of the street. So that was my personal experience. But yeah, there's times when you just got to park on the street, and occasional parking on the street is one thing. Driving your vehicle routinely up in the middle of the grass yard enough that it ruts up the yard and you know, kills the grass and starts to lower the value of, you know, the eye appeal. When you drive by the place and you look at someone's home that's just got you know, cars parked every direction, or, you know, it's rutted up the yard or whatever, that's perceived as a, you know, something that's lowering the property value or maybe affecting the value of the neighborhood. And I think that's where the conversation was going with, you know, not parking in the yard. But again, that's just a conversation. I've heard pros and cons on that, but I haven't heard anybody come up with a final word on it at all.
Yeah, well, and I think, you know, we'd rather not have to do that, but I mean, that's just such a compact neighborhood anyway, the way it's built. And in
Yes.
comparing it to a lot of the other neighborhoods, well, we do this over here, but still, I think that's built more of a compact neighborhood that was never intended for this, and we're trying to fit it into that, so it's making it even more compact, you know, just kind of creating more concerns. And you know, a lot of us now, I mean, we have no choice but to park in the yard, but losing a little bit more space. So obvious concerns there, but I think the parking issue seems to be the big theme, and rightfully so, because we are such a compact neighborhood where you come through there compared to others. So, I mean, we just don't have the same space, and a lot of our drives don't have the same length as some that were built with that intention, you know, not as long driveways and different things. So obvious concerns. And even, you know, like Clyde across the street from me there, and we've talked before, his concern right there, I'm still concerned for him, what's going to happen to him right there. I mean, he's even worse off than a lot of us others. So
yes, sir. Okay.
Obviously concerned for him there.
All right. We're still hanging in with 26 participants. That's pretty strong. We got, you know, 13 minutes left on our allotted. I see Russell waving at me, and I see Tyler there. So Russell, go ahead, Russell.
All right, I do have knowledge of that parking the front yard thing. There were 2 aldermen who were considering making that a rule for code enforcement to enforce. And from my understanding, I think that's been tabled for now. And they were generally looking at more the neighborhoods with curb, gutter, and sidewalk, prevent people from parking in their front yards.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, it really didn't concern me, but now that I have curb and gutter going in,
yes.
Yeah, now it's going to be a concern of mine because I just happen to have a number of antique vehicles, all of which do run.
Okay.
So that is something they're considering, and me personally, if they do that, I'm going to, you know, protest. You know, I served in the Marine Corps, and that's just taking away just another freedom. And I don't much care for that. That's all I have.
Okay. All right, Russell. Tyler, you had your hand up, but it went away. Are we good?
Yeah, that was the Zoom mistake. Sorry about that.
All right. All right. Well, we can certainly live with a Zoom mistake. I tell you what, this technology it's amazing that we can have a productive meeting like this, and I really appreciate all of you for being willing to do this. You know, the more recent guidelines on having large meetings, we're just not able to do what we wish we could do. Certainly not like we had over a year ago when we had that very first meeting over at Bill Harmon Rec Center. But anyway, we're doing a good job today. I see a hand under the Galaxy Note 10. Someone on a Galaxy Note that has a comment?
Yes, this is Antoine Terry at 510 Hemphill.
Yes, sir.
Is the marking of the property, is it 25 feet from the center line both ways, or is it over farther on my side than it is the other side? Because if the city owns 25, say they want 50 feet easement, it needs to be 25 both ways and not 30 one way and 20 the other way to accommodate the small yards on the other side. And because they don't own all this land, they got 25 feet both ways, correct?
Yes, sir. In any of the new streets that are constructed, the street is centered in that 50 feet. So if it's 27 foot wide, back of curb to back of curb, there'd be 13 and a half feet from the center line to where the curb would be, coming toward your yard. But the full right of way, a 50-foot right of way, we typically measure that from the center line of the road, 25 feet to one side and 25 feet to the other. If there is, since this road was, originally put in back in the 50s, if there is a place where there's a little bit of a drift or a curve to one side or the other, we may actually be able to correct that and actually get it back to dead center. But that'll be something we'll look at when they're actually constructing the road, when they lay it out. But that's the way we do roads today. 50-foot right of way, we center it up.
Well, see, and I'm like my neighbor down the street. I got 4 vehicles, and I've been fortunate enough to park my RV in my front yard and everything, and to take half of my yard. I done bought loads of dirt, planted grass, cut down trees, and all this past year. And to help my home value, because I'm trying to sell it, and then for the city to just come in and tear up everything and shorten my yard, it's going to hurt me on the sale end of my own house, and that's not fair. If I'd have known that, which I didn't build this house, I think the easement of the house they talking about, I hadn't heard that the house was built close here, far back here, and the city of Sherwood should have approved every house built on this road when they built the house. So when they gave them the okay years ago to build it, we shouldn't be getting penalized because they want to make a freeway coming down through here, and that's not right.
Yeah, Antoine, I can make there's a couple of details I can supply for you here. As far as the houses and the building permits and such, the earliest plats that I've seen were 1953. The city of Sherwood as a city was like, 5, 6, 7 years old at that time. It was a brand new city, and it was much, much smaller. It didn't get up, close to Hemphill. So that was all county. All of those subdivision plats were platted in Pulaski County. And I don't know the status of any building permits at that time on any houses. Certainly today, anybody builds a house or rebuilds one, the city is issuing the permits and we're doing the inspections, absolutely. But for that time period, all bets were off as to exactly how something got placed in the right place or the wrong place or anything else, because it was in the county, and when it was annexed into the city took it as it was. As far as losing yard, from the legal standpoint of the 50-foot right of way, there's no change to the size of your yard. If you're on a corner lot, there might be just a little bit, okay? But if you're in an interior lot, we call them, with a neighbor on each side, there's not any change in the land that you own. What you might see is that if you measure from the center line of the road, and let's just take the worst case of where we are today. If the choice of most people was, well, we'd like to park on the street, so let's go with a 32 foot. You can measure from the center line of the road 16 feet. And that's where the back of the curve would be. So that's the edge of the concrete in between. That's where that's where your new grass meets the concrete. So the grass you get to mow is all the way, 16 feet off the center line of the road. If the ditch happens to be wider today, if you've got a ditch, you know, if it happens to be wider, or if there's a gradient there that you really can't do anything, if it's difficult, maybe at the end of the project, you've actually got more usable yard. It won't be much, but it might not be negative. It might actually be to the positive where you've got more usable yard. So I don't want to, you know, I can't say one way or the other on every property because I'd have to look at each one individually. Every individual property, we have to look at it that way. But, you know, there's opportunity to get some improvements in here to where at the end of the day, losing all the open ditches actually makes level yard or land that's, you know, filled in, mowable space, it makes that available.
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
This is Tina Dollarhide at 609 Hemphill. What will the new speed limit be through the neighborhood?
If it's either, on either of the widths, either 32 foot or 27, either one of those, it would be appropriate to go either with 25 miles per hour or 30, but it wouldn't, it wouldn't be appropriate to go higher than 30. I don't believe that would be appropriate. I'll have to double check with the engineers on the standards, but to the extent that we're trying to maintain safety and we want people to be able to move through, but moving through at 25 miles an hour for the full length of Hemphill, there's just not a whole lot of difference. And if you were doing 30 or 35, so you know, it's not really slowing people down to where they feel like they can't get anywhere. It's not that bad to go 25. So that might be a good number for us. I really appreciate everybody. I do. And I appreciate your input, and it's been a great evening. We'll get the chat column. I think we had the chat column comments transcribed and available on the website from the first Zoom meeting. I think we did. And I'm pretty sure we can get those up pretty quick. And anybody mailing something in, we'll get them scanned in. We'll run these, we'll check them. Check them. We'll go through them and we'll tabulate all of your comments. And I'd really like to get them in quick. If you can, you know, get them in by next week for sure. So, you know, tomorrow, over the weekend, if you could send them in, we'll be tabulating them next week and trying to finalize this so we can get it ready to go to bid, because we really do have to move on with the project. It's time sensitive from the bond money standpoint. All right, thank you so much. And if you've got a particular comment, email me. That permits at cityofsherwood.net. That comes to our department. And if you tell them I've got a comment for Richard, it'll come straight to me. Otherwise, feel free to call our office if you've got a question. If you want to leave a name and a phone number, we could call you back. Our office phone number is 501-835-4753. That's 835-4753. I see it in the chat line right there in the column. It's written out. All right, folks, have a good evening. And next person you hear from should be the right-of-way consultant. And that'll be a few weeks, but that should be the next one. Thank y'all. Have a good night.